Well, we don't have the full screen of the people rather than why don't we take Gloria, why don't you take your screen down so we have our introduction anyway. Yeah.
All right, and I'm going to start our webinar now, and then I will let you know as soon as we are live on HHTV and we can begin.
We are going to show this again on the 27th of January.
1 o'clock. I
Yes.
set that up. Right. I already got a call about it.
Good.
Be sure and share the link with me. I'll send it out to my board and stuff too, so they can take a look.
Okay, that's a good idea.
All right, we are now live on HHTV. You may begin.
Good evening. I'm Marcia Brown, Chair of the State Tax Issues Committee. And our goal is to provide programs on achieving fair and sustainable taxes for a just economy. Washington has the most regressive taxes in the nation. It has insufficient revenue for the services we need and has extreme income inequality. So we work to have programs that make this more equal in society. Other sponsors tonight are the Diversity and the Neighborhoods Committees. The title of the program tonight is Food Insecurity in Seattle. 1 in 7 low-income and families of color in the US are currently experiencing severe insecurity in food. And that has been made much worse by the pandemic. Efforts to feed these 45 million hungry people rely primarily on federal programs and on charitable food banks. Tonight, our speaker is the Rainier Valley Food Bank Executive Director, Gloria Hatcher-Mays. Laura Weese will introduce her.
Thank you, Marcia. And it's a pleasure to introduce Gloria. I'm really delighted that she could be with us. Virtual is much better than not at all, and we're happy you're here. Gloria has been the executive director of the Rainier Valley Food Bank since May of 2019. I'm sure when she took the job, she didn't know what was going to be ahead of her with the March 2020 COVID shutdown. So it's been quite a ride. Before her present job, she was the grant administrator for the Renton Regional Community Foundation. And she has held a number of jobs in the nonprofit sector, covering every area of special events, programs, contracts, projects. Before that, and it's hard to believe this, Gloria, because you are so young, that you had a long career working for a Fortune 500 company in telecommunications. And that after leaving that career, you chose to work in community service. So in addition to your, I guess, day jobs with nonprofits, you have also been quite involved in your community, civic engagement. She is chair of the Board of Commissioners for Fire Protection District 10. She's a board commissioner for East Side Fire and Rescue. And she is the chair of the board recruitment committee for the Issaquah Food and Clothing Bank. She's been a member of the board of directors there for over 3 years. In her spare time, she spends time with her husband, her dog, and 3 horses in rural King County. Gloria, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so very much for inviting me. It's really a pleasure to be with you this evening. I really do have a passion for the work that I do. Laura mentioned to you that I used to work in the telecommunications industry, and one of the reasons why I can pretend to be young is that I started there when I was 17 years old. And when you work for a corporation for a very long time, one of the things that happens or can happen is that you develop an appreciation for doing work that results in someone's life getting better. You kind of want to see that direct impact that you can have, which led me to the nonprofit industry. And I sort of restarted my career around that whole concept where I wanted to work all day and know that at the end of my labors that somebody's life maybe got better as a result of the work that I did. And I do have that opportunity in working at the Rainier Valley Food Bank. And I'm going to take a little bit of time with you and talk about what food insecurity is, who is involved in the food insecurity industry in our community, and how we can all contribute to making our community a better place relative to making food accessible to the folks that live in our community with us. I am just going to take a minute and get this started. And hopefully you can all see that those lovely vegetables that make up the opening page of this PowerPoint presentation. I really want to make sure that I share the wealth a little bit. So while I will talk about the Rainier Valley Food Bank, I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about the other organizations that are involved in the food insecurity system and how they all work together. I am going to then share some specifics about the work that we do at Rainier Valley Food Bank. And then I'm going to talk about really what it would take for us to begin to whittle away at this as a problem and get to some root cause solutions. If you have questions, what I'd like you to do is put your questions in the chat window and we will be able to respond to you. You can also use the feature where you can raise your hand and we will be able to call on you in that event as well. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. Food insecurity does not mean that you don't have access to any food at all. It means that it's not consistently available to you for every person who lives in your household. And it's not available in such plentiful supply that everybody in your household can live an active, healthy, and sustainable life. It can be a temporary situation, or it can be something that persists over time. One of the things that happened when COVID hit is that folks were told that they needed to stay home and stay sheltered. And in some industries, that meant that you were staying home without being compensated. And this was especially true in lower income positions, such as maids at hotels or in the service industry for restaurants. When they shut down operations, they told their wait staff to stay home, but they didn't have an income, which then threw a lot of folks who had never been exposed to food insecurity to be food insecure for the very first time. A couple of years ago, when these statistics were developed, in King County, it looked as though we had approximately 200,000 people out of the total population of the county that were in the predicament of being food insecure. And that works out to be at roughly 9% of the total population. If you consider, which I find hard to believe really, that you can get an average meal for $3.90 or roughly $4, in order to make up the gap that would have all of those 200,000 souls secure in their ability to access food, we would need $126 million in order for that gap to be closed. So it's a significant issue. In terms of how we have crafted a response to the issue of food insecurity, not only in the county, but really in this whole state, we have a system that all functions together to respond. We have the federal government that's involved in providing what's called Supplemental Nutrition and Assistance Program. It's a program that used to be known as food stamps. And now what we do is we provide families that qualify a debit card that they can use to shop for their groceries in the grocery store. And why that's important is that it used to be very obvious if you were in line behind somebody who was using food stamps that they had to use a federal program in order to buy their grocery items. But now with the debit card, it provides some transparency for them, and it's a more respectful way to make sure that their needs are being met. Oftentimes, the federal benefit is far below what a household would need in order to cover the costs of their foodstuffs. And so we have additional supports in our community that help close that gap. We have an organization called Food Lifeline. And Food Lifeline has 350 food bank partners and meal programs that they supply food to in bulk to help defray the costs of being able to make ends meet for the communities that they serve. We have Northwest Harvest, who also provides bulk food items to food banks in our community. They are also, though, an incubator for new ideas relative to fighting food insecurity. One of the things that Northwest Harvest has done is opened a new market in the Soto area. And when you go into this market, you'll be so shocked and surprised. It looks like a Whole Foods. It looks like a PCC. It provides a shopping experience for people who are food insecure that's respectful, that provides a very high quality of food for them to choose from, and that completely fundamentally shifts the way we think about what a food bank might be. And they're test driving this as an idea that others can take, because what they want to do is create a foundational operational manual for these things and then share it with their peer groups so that somebody like me who runs a food bank can take that off the shelf and try implementing it in my own organization so that everyone who has access or needs access to a food bank would potentially have the ability to access food in this more respectful manner. We also have an organization called the Seattle Food Committee. The Seattle Food Committee is an organization that was funded by the city of Seattle, and they pay solid ground to convene the meal and food bank programs under one umbrella so that we work to collaborate with one another on ideas, on policy, on the type of access to food that we want for our patrons, on what trends may be around culturally competent foods and the ways in which we can promote the use of those foods and teach effective practices around those foods. And it's really unique that that type of organization exists. And we work really hard with one another to make sure that we're sharing the wealth amongst our partners to build a sense of both community and also efficacy around how we are going about working to create access to food for those that we serve. The state is also involved in making sure that foodstuffs are available to these organizations. The state provides funding through the WSDA, the Washington State Department of Agriculture, that makes foodstuffs available to us. And they've been very helpful during COVID, crafting boxes that are pre-packaged so that we can do mass distributions. One of the things that Rainier Valley Food Bank did during the pandemic was we opened a drive-through facility at Rainier Beach Community Center. We started by serving 200 vehicles each time we were open once a week on Wednesdays. And by the time we finished, we were serving over 600 cars through that portal, making sure that people got the foodstuffs that they needed on a weekly basis. So we were really quite proud of that initiative. At the county level, one of the things that King County is doing that's quite innovative is that they are focused on funding farmers. They have done a really fantastic job of working to enhance farmers markets. They make vouchers available to people who are in the food bank system so that you can take your voucher and shop for fresh and locally grown produce. Another opportunity to make sure that we are maximizing the nutritional benefit of the foodstuffs that people are able to access through our food bank system. I would be remiss if I didn't mention the fact that the community is a really key part of our system. We access support from the community in many different ways. It's the normal ways that you might think of, folks that do food drives for us, or people who are just willing to donate to us on a monthly basis. But we also have something called free food pantry boxes. And people, you might see the library kiosks that people have built in their neighborhoods. They've done the same thing with food. They've built little kiosks, and we have a set of bikers who go around and replenish the supply of food that are in these pantry boxes, so that people, just as they pass by, can take the foodstuffs that they need right out of a locally accessed box right in their own neighborhood. So we are trying to create a system that there is ubiquitous access to food. One of the things we plan to do, and I'll talk a little bit more about this later on in the presentation, but we have moved to a new location, and everything that we plant around our building is going to be edible. And we plan on putting a row of hedges in front of our building, and we plan on making that a group of blueberry bushes. And when I was explaining to someone that we were going to do this, they said, well, people will take the berries. And I said, exactly, people will take the berries. You know, it's a wonderful concept that food is just available to you. You don't have to struggle to access it. It's not hard to get. That really we're just trying to make it ubiquitously available throughout our community. The Beacon Hill Food Forest is a really good example of that, where they grow food in pea patches, and they make it available to the public to come through and pick items directly out of the garden for use at home. So it's another example where food is just accessible to people. And so we are part of a very robust, a very fluid, and a growing system of access that we're creating for our community. This is all a description of response. Okay, we know we have this problem. We know people need to be able to get food, and we've crafted this way that we can respond and we can make food available. But we also know that that's really not solving the problem. A food bank is a momentary ability to access food, but it's not a permanent solution to the issue of food insecurity, because the next time we have a pandemic where an employer sends all their employees home, we'll find ourselves right back in that same predicament again if we don't figure out a better system that is more pliable and adaptable to make sure that folks can just go to their local grocery and get their needs met, even if they can just pull in and wait for their groceries to be loaded in the back of their car. Now, I'm not saying I want to put myself completely out of business as a food bank executive director, because we do a lot more than just offer foodstuffs to people. We always want to have a touch point with our community and invite them in and work with them to get stable in their lives, in other aspects of their lives, even beyond food. But we definitely do know that we have a lot of work to do on hunger, to incorporate a solution that takes into account some of the other social supports that people may need to survive. We know that hunger is not a standalone issue. We know that hunger is a symptom of issues that started in persistent poverty. And we know that it's generational poverty, that there have been issues of systemic racism that have led families from generation to generation to generation to remain in poverty. We also know that it is part of a suite of basic needs, things like housing and shelter, financial assets that keep you stable, employment opportunities that help you grow your wealth over time, and then obviously a need for nutritious food, not just foodstuffs. So what is the response that would connect up solutions to what we're trying to do in our system? Well, we feel as though we can enhance the system that we currently have by making it more connected, by making sure that between each food bank provider, there's a connection point that says, if you've got this extra food stuff, you can move it over to our food bank because we have this high demand. It would work just like most businesses work today, where they share wealth and resources, they move product between entities and organizations, and nothing goes to waste in that model. Hopefully nothing is going to waste in this model that we'll craft and create that is geographically based. We definitely want to reduce wasted food. We want to put every food item that we get to purpose in some way, shape, or form. And what that looks like for us is that we will grow food, we will prepare and cook food and teach people how to prepare and cook food. We will build sustainability with food by teaching people how to preserve food, making canned goods, making jams and jellies, and that type of thing. We'll also help people incubate new food products that they can test drive in our small environment and then take to scale by working with an organization like the Rainier Beach Action Coalition, which is going to create a food innovation center in the Rainier Beach neighborhood. And once they take it to scale, they can become entrepreneurs and work on raising more money, being more employable, and building sustainability for their families economically. But if it should come to pass that we have waited too long and there's an item of food that we can't put to purpose through consuming it, we want to recycle it. And we have lots of different methodologies for that. So we want to have composting mechanisms. We want to have incineration mechanisms. And then we want to make sure that we're putting whatever is the output of that destruction mechanism back into the environment to be repurposed to growing food again. So we've created an entire life cycle for the food items that come into our environment that completely avoids going anywhere near landfill. We definitely want more ubiquity attached to food. We are contemplating different models that look at adding an enhancement to the Supplemental Nutrition and Assistance Program debit card. But that still gives folks an opportunity to come to the food bank and meet with us and work with us on other aspects of their life and their livelihoods. So the food bank, I'm going to talk a little bit now about Rainier Valley, the Rainier Valley Food Bank. So Seattle has 30 food banks. And of those 30 food banks, 1/4 of all visits to food banks are to the Rainier Valley Food Bank. We're the busiest food bank in the city of Seattle. In 2021, we acquired and distributed over 1 million pounds of food to over 2,000 households. In the zip code that we operate in primarily is the most diverse population of any zip code in the state of Washington. And we also have a very high incidence of poverty. We aren't actually the highest, but we have a very high incidence of poverty in and around the food bank. Now, again, one of the things that I mentioned is that we want ubiquity. And so we don't put barriers between people who say they need our food and their ability to access our food. We don't require that people live in our zip code. We don't even require that people live within the city limits of Seattle. Anyone who presents themselves at the food bank requesting food, we will serve them and support them and offer them groceries. So we are very no to low barrier food bank from that standpoint. Our zip code is very dense in terms of how many people live there. And 15.6% of the population live in poverty in that zip code. And 25% of those folks are children, and 13% are seniors. So the most vulnerable people in the city are in this zip code and in need of foodstuffs. 42% of the 918-118 population make over $100,000 a year. So that seems a little incongruent that we would also have a high incidence of folks that need help from the food bank. And 12% make over 200,000. But that's only 60% of the houses in 98118 that are owner occupied. And so the rest of the population that don't make that kind of money are those folks that we serve at the food bank. 5% of the houses are worth over $1 million. So again, it seems really incongruent that we would have this high incidence of food insecurity issue in our zip code. We know that we live in a very liberal city, a very generously liberal city. People want to be of help, they want to be of service, and they do support the food bank and our intention to serve. The median income in the United States is roughly $68,000, and Seattle's median income is roughly $87,000. The folks at Rainier Valley Food Bank that we've hired to do this work reflect the community that we serve. In fact, many of the folks that I hired to work on my staff used to be clients of the food bank. They were raised in the Rainier Valley neighborhood, and they've come to us through social programs and then ended up staying as employees of the food bank. So they can really relate to what the need is there and how to treat people with dignity in the process. A quote from one of my employees, this is Tara Migliori, and she was working and she was having her first child, and she fell and had an accident and broke her leg and ultimately could not work any longer and therefore needed the services of a food bank. So when she had the opportunity to come and work for us, she came because she understood the community that she was going to be of service to, and she could relate to what their needs were in terms of that process. This is James Johnson Gruspie. He also was a member of the community raised in the Rainier Valley, and he came to us through a program at WorkSource that helped people get back on their feet through a worker training program. And he fell in love with the food bank, and he is still there to this day. In fact, I just promoted him to a new position. And he really understands the need to help people establish their own independence. We know that when folks come to the food bank needing services, that they start out in a position of dependence, but we work with them to establish them on a pathway to independence. We want to see them living their own lives, making their own decisions about their lives. And beyond food, we know that we can create systems and programs that give them a leg up and set them on a path to be able to do that. So where did this problem come from? Where did the issue of poverty come from? You know, we know that there were systems put in place well before all of us were aware that they were even in existence, things like redlining, that really inhibited the ability for families to grow wealth in the city of Seattle. And it's going to take us a long time to unwind that. This slide just sort of gives you an example in real terms of what that looks like in terms of where folks are living in the city today. A lot of this is so ingrained that even though the redlining and the covenants and things are being dismantled, it's still very difficult for people and families to have mobility that would give them access to neighborhoods that were non-traditional for the BIPOC community. So it's going to take a while to unwind that whole systemic poverty piece. We're committed, though, at the food bank to nourishing people. It starts with food. We know that we need to build community, and through building community and building an accessible network of service to be able to serve that community, that's how we're going to get after the root cause of food insecurity in the city. And so that's really at the heart of everything that we try to do. we want to make sure that there's room for everybody at the table at the food bank. One of the things that we've done is established a pea patch. We know we're going to have a garden of our own someday, but in the meantime, with our pea patch garden, we are able to attract people to support the food bank in new ways and in all sorts of socioeconomic backgrounds. It gives them an ability to join us, to be a part of our community, to help grow our community, to use their expertise to help us learn about gardening, to provide vegetable starts that we can give to folks to take home and teach their children how to grow their own vegetables. So we're super excited about that. We know that income can be divisive if you have money or you don't have money, but we really feel like through food and through the care that we provide to our neighbors, that we will find a way to bring community together because we feel that's what binds us together. We have a lot of neighbors who volunteer at the food bank, who donate food to the food bank as part of that system that I talked about earlier in the presentation. And we know that that's going to lead to a reduction in barriers for access for people to be able to get their needs met in this system. So that is the information that I prepared to share with you. I have a lot more detail that I can offer if you have questions. I would love to take your questions. And you can, as I mentioned, put those in the chat, or you can raise your hand and I'll address them in that way. So please feel comfortable in asking anything that you might have on your mind. If there's something that you didn't hear that you were hoping you were going to hear in this presentation, I'd love to take that information and question from you. If there's something that you heard that didn't quite strike you as correct, or you want more details about it, I'd be happy to take those kinds of questions. And if you want to know more about Rainier Valley Food Bank and some of the work that we're doing there, I'd be happy to field those questions as well.
That was great, Gloria. Thank you so much. And I really hope that you will explain what we saw when we were there that day. How the system works and how the drivers come and how the people fill the containers and things like that. I think we'd enjoy hearing that.
Okay, when COVID hit, we had to shut down our grocery store. We used to have a little operation where folks could come in and they could shop for the foodstuffs in our facility on their own. And it was no longer safe for us to be able to do that. So we converted our program to an all home delivery model. And the only way we were able to do that is because a neighbor, one of our volunteers, had a background in logistics. And he helped us locate a software program that converted all of our clients into routes so that we could create routes for drivers to follow that made sense, that could be completed in an hour. And then we had volunteers that came in and social distance. We had to lease an additional facility to provide enough space for them to do so. But they pack all of the grocery bags up. We give them a sheet to follow so that they know exactly what kinds of foodstuffs will make a comprehensive bag of groceries for a week for a family that matches the household size that we're serving. And we can also pack dietary restriction bags. So we have specialty bags that have labels on them that explain whether someone is a diabetic or that they are gluten intolerant or any of the plethora issues that someone may have, or they are a vegetarian. And so we can pack these specialty bags for them as well. We have between 75 and 95 volunteers who drive these routes for us every week. And they come through our parking lot. They can stay in their cars and not be at risk for any kind of exposure. We load up all the groceries into the back of their car and hand them their route. And we have a way of staying in communication with them through text messaging and phone calls. So if anything should change on their route, we can let them know in real time, and off they go. And they deliver their routes. They get to know the people that they're delivering to. It gives us a chance to, excuse me, I have to cough. Sorry about that. It gives us a chance to check in with people and make sure that they aren't having any health issues that we need to intervene and find supports for them. We can make sure that the food that we're giving them is working for them, or we can make adjustments. And it has just been a phenomenal program, but all because we had community support and being able to stand it up. We deliver between 600 and 700 bags of groceries every week. And in addition to that, we have a backpack program for schools around the food bank. We have 11 schools that are enrolled in our backpack program. And we pack off bulk groceries to them, and they have volunteers at the schools that pack those bags for their students to take home to their families as well. Because we know a little backpack full of food is not going to cut it. If you as a student are hungry, probably your whole household is hungry. So we make sure we send enough groceries home for the entire family. And then last but not least, we have what we call a to-go bag, which is ready to eat foods. And if you are living unsheltered in Seattle and you're in need of food, you can stop by the food bank. We'll give you a bag to go. It usually has 2 sandwiches, beverages, snacks, maybe something sweet, and it will tide you over until you need to stop back by and pick up another source. But you don't have to cook anything that's in that bag. And then we have a social services program so that if you're in need for shelter or you need healthcare or anything, you can work with our social services provider to get connected to social services support to work on those kinds of issues as well.
That's really important. I think getting connected to the right source to solve the problem is the hardest part. And
absolutely.
you provide that. Yeah, that's great. Are there any other questions, or shall we go to May and have her give her experiences of working with food banks and
cooking? Sally Wren has raised her hand.
Okay. All right. Does Sally want to go first?
Let's see if she can be. She has to be unmuted. So let's see. Can you? I don't. Risa, how do we do this?
I've asked Sally to unmute so that she can speak.
Okay, great.
Risa, can you unmute Sally for us?
She's asked her to do that. Yeah.
Okay, am I still unmuted?
No, you're okay.
Okay, my question is, I was very involved for years with the food bank up in the North End in Lake City. And I'm wondering if this incredible program you've started has carried out through other food banks in our state.
Yes, absolutely. In addition, you might recall that I talked about the Seattle Food Committee. There is a larger organization that is statewide called the Washington Food Committee. And all food banks have access to the types of resources that I described through that state level organization. A member organization for the Seattle Food Committee is the North Helpline. I'm not sure if that's the organization that you worked with.
Yes.
Okay, the North Helpline is one of our member organizations, and they too run a program very similar to ours in that they have grocery shopping that is done in the like or similar way. They've had to make some modifications similar to what Rainier Valley Food Bank has done because of the pandemic, but they continue to run their program in a very similar fashion as ours. And they make food stuff available at a very high level of service. As I mentioned, we have the highest volume, but the North Helpline is located in one of the areas of the city where the highest incidence of poverty actually is. There and in the southeast part of the city around White Center. Those are the two highest areas. So the North Helpline runs a very similar program to ours.
Thank you.
That's great. Thank you. Okay, any other questions? Well, why don't we have May talk a little bit about what she knows of the food bank she worked with, and also a meal, a group that got together and made warm food for people.
Well, thank you, Marcia. And Gloria, that was so interesting. I learned so much from you. So thank you so much for coming and talking with us. It, I think, really put the little things that we all try to do into a much larger context, and helped us to understand the links between poverty and food insecurity and lack of housing. It's all so intertwined. Before I moved to the Horizon House, I lived on a small island, and the sheer numbers there don't even compare with Seattle. We had maybe 25 homeless people, or I should say unsheltered. But we wanted to make sure that we took care of them and that they had all their needs met. So all the social service agencies got together with the churches and helped out at the food bank, and also started a program where every night of the week, a hot meal would be served in a different location, so that people had one hot meal, at least one hot meal every day. And it was a very successful program. We all ate together. We got to know one another. Everybody, we got to know the needs of the people that we were serving. We became friends, actually. And I really feel that the entire community benefited. And when I heard that you were coming, I really was pondering about how we could do something here at the Horizon House to help in a small way, like I did on Vashon. How can we really help you succeed? And one of the things that used to be done here was there was an annual food drive. And people brought in cans and pasta and things that were still good, but were non-perishable. And I was wondering if we did a big food drive here, if that's something that could be transported to one of the food banks, and if that would be helpful, or do you have enough sources of food?
We always welcome food drives, because one of the things we attempt to do is close the gaps that we have. And I'll just offer this as an example. We're coming up on Chinese New Year. There's lots of different ways in which it's celebrated in the community. And it would be great if we could shore up our normal foodstuffs with food items that would match with the cultural needs of the folks celebrating Chinese New Year. So I'm just giving this as an example. There's lots of other ways in which we can make this work. But we would provide a list of items that we would ask you to basically source for us, if possible, so that your folks could shop with intention at the grocery to fill specific needs. Another area that we always need help with, I know we're a food bank, but diapers are a big deal. Diapers and formula and baby wipes and, supplies for kids, a really big deal. So we could do a targeted drive around those kinds of things as well. But we love working with community groups who are interested in holding food drives for us, because just like doing this talk on this call with you all tonight, we are trying to build community, and we want people to feel connected to their local food banks. And working with us by doing that kind of drive, it helps collapse the barrier between the general community at large and the food bank. We want you to know what we're doing. It's a point of education. It's very informative, and it can be a lot of fun to bring in the food items. A lot of groups do neighborhood drives where they collect things on their porch, and then they compete neighbor to neighbor to see who brought in the most. So you can make something really fun out of this. We really we like to work with community groups and set something up that works for you, and in a time frame that works for you, and that maybe matches up with a need that we are coming up to at a specific point in time.
Well, that's very helpful. I know from experience that these programs, when you do work collaboratively, have such a multiplier effect, and everybody feels better. So thank you for that. We'll see what we can do at our end.
Absolutely.
I know that some things that people have done is they use some of their food allowance here at Horizon House when they don't use it all, and they make big lasagnas and sometimes take them to places. But you're not really in the hot food service business.
No, not yet. One of the things I didn't spend a lot of time and talk about is that we were fortunate enough to move to a new location. And I did have some slides showing you the difference between where we were and where we are now. It's sort of like the difference between my being in this little square on the screen right now versus my taking up the entire screen. That's the difference for Rainier Valley Food Bank in terms of where we've moved. So we have a lot more room to navigate and a lot more room to keep people safe and social distance. And we are very hopeful that by the end of March, we'll be able to reopen to do some in-person shopping again, which we very much look forward to. I say all that just because it is just really not something that we can do right now to have meals available. But our future dream is to have a commercial kitchen and to have a flexible space where we can invite community members in for hot meals, to talk about their community, to talk about their dreams for their community, to plan and have a point of convening. We want the food bank to be a hub for the community. It's sort of interesting that when you throw a party at your house, everyone congregates in the kitchen. And we want it to be like that at the food bank, where we have a kitchen where everyone can congregate. Yeah. So unfortunately, not yet, but we hope to get there.
And you have the space to do it.
And we have the space to do it.
That's great. That's great. Okay. Well, I think we were really interested in also in how you get your financing. I think you went over that the federal government provides things, and that is the state providing anything?
The state doesn't provide direct funding to us. We do have a contract with the city of Seattle that pays for a good deal of what we're doing, most especially around operating the food banks per se. We also, though, the largest source of operating funds for us is individual donations. And sometimes that is just a person who stops by with $5. And sometimes it's a family that has their own fund. And so they give us money out of their family fund. But whatever the level of giving is, it's all those incremental dollars all together that add up to the largest source of funding that keeps us afloat every year.
The donations do, rather than the federal government.
Absolutely. Yep.
Uh-huh. And now is Solid Ground, which runs that program that unites you all, is that funded by the state or the city?
That's funded by the city of Seattle. They are given an administrative contract to be able to hire staff and run the programming to bring us all together. We meet on a weekly basis. Some of us, because I'm one of the co-chairs of the collaborative, I meet with the executive members of the committee once a week also. So we convene, we have committees that work on advocacy, that work on making decisions about how we spend the funds that we get from the city for bulk buy products, that work on issues of operations so that we're continuously improving how we deliver service to the clients that we serve. And so it's quite an operation. We also have a program where, like when there's a major event that happens, like our snowstorm we had a few weeks ago, we can activate what's called an emergency ring down, and we can notify the media and the 211 line what our hours are. So people have a way to find out where they can get food, even during an emergency or like a snowstorm.
And are there food banks in the central Seattle area?
Yes,
I
there
know.
are. There is one at an organization that used to be known as CAMP that's called Bird Bar Place. Jewish Family Services also operates a food bank that's located near the central part of the city. The food bank at St. Mary's is more toward the central part of the city. There's a very small food bank in the central, excuse me, the CID, the Chinese International District.
Mhm.
And then, of course, there's Soto Market and the Rainier Valley Food Bank.
Now, do you feel you've covered the city, that the food banks covered the city?
You know, I
Is
always
there a
feel like
need somewhere?
I always feel like we can do better, Marcia. One of the things that I've started in the middle part of last year is I convened a group of providers that are near the Rainier Valley Food Bank to talk about how we could close any gaps there might be in the service area to make sure we're not missing anybody. One of the things that happened is that we sadly had to create a wait list because when you do home delivery, it limits your ability to do as high a production rate as we used to do when we used to open for grocery shopping. So we know that there are people that might be getting missed, and we want to be able to close that gap. And we are also trying to work with the county and the city on developing some metrics for us that would basically show in real-time data what that looks like, where those pockets might be, so that we can work to close them.
Yeah, of course, we see a lot of homeless and we assume hungry people downtown, and I just hope they're getting some services.
Yeah, the meal programs, I think, tend to be more of a service to folks like that, because again, like our to-go bags, if you're living unsheltered, you have no way to prepare foods. So a bulk bag of groceries from the food bank is not really helpful.
Yeah.
Right.
And so a hot meal helps, a voucher to get a meal helps, ready to eat meals help. And we try to make those kinds of foodstuffs available through the Seattle Food Committee and the Meals Partnership Coalition. Now, the Meals Partnership Coalition is like the Seattle Food Committee in that they've brought together meal providers to work like we do to make sure that they're closing gaps in their service areas as well. And making sure that where there are needs for hot meals, that those are being delivered. Chicken Soup Brigade is one of the organizations in the Meal Partnership Coalition. Operation Sack Lunch is another one. And so there's lots of meal providers that are trying to make sure that from a ready to eat meal perspective, we have gotten that base covered as well.
So the people you serve usually have housing.
From the food bank, yes. I mean, except for our to-go bags, the bulk groceries that we pack are geared towards someone who has a kitchen and preparation space.
So are there other people that would like to ask questions? I don't see our audience, so I don't know. I don't know what's out there. Help me, somebody.
Well, unfortunately, the people watching on HHTV can't ask questions, so we hope
Yeah.
that we'll be hearing from them more after.
I
So
do hope I can re-share that slide, but I do
Yes,
hope
please.
that if folks do have questions or they want to stop by and see our operation, I hosted a couple of folks that are on the video call with us this evening to come tour the food bank. And I think that they'd agree. It was really an informative evening, and we'll make it fun and interesting for you. We'd love to have you come see. And so please do use my email, and I'll put it in the chat window also, so that you can send me a request to meet or send me any questions that you might have. And I'd love to visit with you and chat with you and answer any questions that you might have. So I think my message just went to Risa. Let me correct it so it goes to everybody. And I'll put my email address in the chat window for you.
Well, Laura and I went to visit Rainier Valley Food Bank, and we enjoyed it so much. It was great to meet the people and to see what you do. And it's
Yes,
a great space. It's a great space. Laura, did you want to say something?
Oh, I was just going to say, we were there the week of the big snow toward the end of it, and there was rain, I think, that day. Anyway, we saw people working in adverse weather conditions, I would say.
Yeah, they're like the mail service, neither snow nor sleet or our volunteers.
Nothing
always-
stops you.
Yes. The first day when it was really bad, we had a parking lot that was full of snow, and we were expecting drivers to be able to drive through, pick up their groceries, and go out and do deliveries. And the city was still sort of sanding and clearing some of the side streets and whatnot. And we started by shoveling in the parking lot. And then one of my employees flagged down an SDOT truck with a little shovel on the front and the sander in the back. And they came in and they cleared our whole parking lot for us. So,
That was great.
I mean, I have to tell you that when I talk about community and when I talk about community building, it involves everybody. That driver said that anytime it snowed, he would come and clear our parking lot for us. So we've made a friend for life, right?
Wow,
Great.
that's
Yeah.
That's
good
good.
to hear about SDOT, which is Seattle Department of Transportation.
Yes. Yes, indeed.
Great. Well, I'm sorry we don't have our full audience that can ask lots of questions. And you gave us so much, and I think we would really appreciate having your slides.
Oh, I'll send them to you.
I thought they were really, and we learned a lot, as May said.
We did.
It was very good.
Absolutely. I'll send those along to you, and again, encourage the guests who are listening. Please don't hesitate to reach out and give me a call. I'd love to hear from you and
Yeah.
visit with you and answer any questions that you might have afterward.
Yeah. How large a group can you handle?
I can handle, we can, when we have our volunteer groups come in, we have about between 15 and 20 packing grocery bags for us. And then, as I mentioned, our driver, the squad of drivers is like between 75 and 95 on a drive-through basis. So, but we can accommodate, and we can make sure that we have KN95 masks, make sure that
Well,
you're protected.
I'm sure they would come with those, but maybe we should wait a little bit. Maybe it looks like maybe in 2 weeks it's going to get better. Hopefully. There's not another variety leaking out there.
Well, I'd be happy to host, so just let me know.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, thank you so much, Gloria. I think we have a lot to absorb from what you said tonight.
Well, thank you. I'll go ahead and drop off, and I really appreciate having the time with you all this evening. Thank you so much.
Well,
Thank
thank you
you.
so much.